Good evening, everybody. This is Pastor Jonathan Lowder of the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church of Bolingbrook, Georgia. Also, grateful tonight to have all of you log on. Please take time and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to tune in to these necessary conversations, lessons learned, what's at stake. Whether you're watching us at mtziononthemove.org, watching us through YouTube, on Hope from Mount Zion TV, or on Facebook, either Jonathan F. Lowder or Zion Mission. We appreciate you so much. Listen, do me a favor before I introduce our panel tonight. Please, ma'am, please, sir, like, comment, and share. Like, comment, and share. Let us know where you're watching us from. If you have any questions tonight, you can put those in the comments. And we will get to them as soon as possible. Again, like, comment, and share this conversation. We have a lot to discuss, but we're not going to get through all of it tonight. So we're already in anticipation of having the second discussion. But we're going to do our best to try to be done. We'll not just try to be done. We're going to be done at 8:30. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section, and we'll be grateful for that. Again, this is Pastor Jonathan Lowder, aka Pastor J, and I want to introduce our panel tonight. We have some amazing pastors, men who I have looked up to for a while. We connect in ministry. I call them my uncles because they are the elder statesmen. I'm just, a little squirrel in their world. And so I want to introduce each of them, and I'm going to bring them on here all together. First up, Pastor David Anthony Clarke of Union Grove Missionary Baptist Church.
Hey.
He has been a mentor to me, can you believe, since 2005. A long time, and grateful for him. Pastor Clarke, say what's up to the people.
What's up? Thanks for having me on, nephew. Really appreciate it. Glad to be on with such esteemed gentlemen and esteemed host. Looking forward to tonight.
Bless you, sir. Next up, we're gonna go down to Old Perry Road.
Wow.
We're going there to the Piney Grove Missionary Baptist Church. My other uncle, my friend and brother, he has been a major blessing to me since we've connected, and I am grateful for his friendship, his encouragement, and the man can flat bone preach, hands down. Him and Pastor Clarke, they can just flat bone preach. I do Sunday school lessons. They do the theological dissertations. Y'all give it up.
Speeches.
y'all give it up. Watch this. Watch Clarke how I get them. Y'all give it up for Carrie's baby. None other than Pastor Lonnie Slater. Y'all give it up for talk to the people, greet the people there.
Well, listen, God bless each and every one of you. Pastor Lowder, thank you for putting the 3 G's back together this year. Listen, man, I'm looking forward to the discussion. We've got some important issues going on in our country and our churches. So let's get to the discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Final piece of the puzzle. This has to be the second biggest Georgia Bulldog fan in the world. He's the second biggest. But I never shall forget. If you have grew up in Middle Georgia, you knew about the McIntosh brothers, preaching extraordinaires. He's been preaching since the age of 14. He is the pastor of the Green Grove Missionary Baptist Church there in the big city of Hawkinsville. Hawkinsville, they'll slap you. He is also, what I like to say, most people really may not know this, he is the initiator of drive-through worship in Middle Georgia. You weren't really talking about. He's the one that really got it started, and everybody started to kind of gleam off of that. He is my other uncle, my friend, my brother, and I appreciate him so much. He is the one and only Pastor Derrell McIntosh. Say what's up to the people, man.
Hello, everybody. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be on tonight. I'm certainly looking forward to this dialogue and prayerfully we'll be able to share something that will help and inspire us to weather this storm and season that we're in.
Amen. Amen. Now, listen again. If you have questions, comments, 3G is in the house. They are so they going. This is going to be a 5G moment. But 3G is in the house, and I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. Let's jump right on in, brothers. You all know that all of us have been involved in this pandemic, not exclusively, inclusively, in more ways than one. Anybody who feels they have been excluded from this, they're living on Mars. But this has been an inclusive, and I think it'll be very prevalent for each of us, starting with Pastor Clarke. Can you tell us really what are some of the things you've learned about this pandemic, about yourself, but then at the same time, how has this affected you and your aim at ministry through this pandemic?
Yeah, thank you, man. Again, thanks for having us on. And personally, on the one hand, I'm busier, but I'm not ripping and running as much.
Gotcha.
So I love it how I'm grinding harder than I have been, but I'm a lot more stable. And by that I mean, when I get to the church, I'm at the church until I, all day until I leave the church. Or if I'm at the crib grinding, I'm at the crib. So I'm not going to the church for a couple minutes, then going over someplace else for a meeting, leaving there, going to another meeting, then going to City Hall, then going over, all these other different places, man.
Right.
So I'm loving the stability of it, and it's a slower pace, and I'm working harder. Now, in my respective context, our congregation is an older congregation. Most of my people are over 60. I'd say at least a good 65% of my congregation is over 60. And so among them, they have underlying issues, and they're telling me to slow down, take my time. It's okay. We're not in any hurry. But so it's one thing to talk about. I'm looking. Well, let me say this. I'm learning what it's like really to pastor an older congregation, because even to return to in-person worship, my questions are, who's going to usher? Because most of my ushers are over 60.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to provide any kind of medical assistance? Because most of the people on my medical assistant, my healthcare team, most of them over 60. So my eyes are open now to what it's like to pastor and shepherd this older demographic. And again, personally, slow down, take advantage of the slower pace, and just grind like there's no tomorrow, But and really, what's necessary, man? And I've questioned that for years. What's really necessary, what's really not. I have questioned how effective and how necessary conferences are: men's conference, women's conference, leadership conference, even revival. And so now I'm really realizing that what really matters is what we can do to build tighter connections and stronger relationships within our congregations.
Right.
Getting people more closely connected to God and more closely connected to one another. So I'm reassessing what's really vital in terms of events we put on, including Sunday morning. Yeah.
I love that. Dr. Slater, chime in right there. Tell us how some of the adjustments as well, how this has affected you.
Well, I will agree with the same things Pastor Clarke is saying. There's this idea out there that because we're not, quote unquote, in the church now, that pastors are less busier. And I think all of us can attest that's not true. We're on the phone more with members than we have ever been in the past. Also, it has sharpened our studies. I think, for me, I've always have been a student when I go into the pulpit, but we're learning now that you're sharper now. You have to be sharper now, because people are in the luxury of their home and they can Google what you're saying. They're comparing you to their favorite preacher now.
Right.
And so the research that the congregation can now do on your theology or theological presentation makes you be sharper. And then I like to, and like Dr. Clarke said, we have to now look at what a Sunday morning worship looks like now.
Yeah.
We have to look at what does a Wednesday night Bible study look at now. And then we've got to remember, whether we want to accept this or not, we have a Facebook Live congregation now.
Yeah.
When the doors are open, we just can't drop them. We have to have now a permanent Facebook Live, YouTube, whatever your media platform is. You've got to continue that. This is not temporary. I think a lot of pastors are looking at, oh, this is just temporary until we get back in. You cannot be in that mindset. You now have a Facebook Live, YouTube congregation that looks forward to you ministering to their souls. And so church is no longer a brick and mortar. We've always talked about that. Oh, brick and mortar. It's not about brick and mortar. Well, guess what? COVID has forced us into accepting that as a reality.
Yeah.
It is not brick and mortar. And then the last thing I'll add is that as we look at this older piece, one thing I am starting to appreciate is that when I think about going back into service, most of our seniors love coming to church because it is their social outlet.
Right.
And so that concerns me about when we should go back and the safety of when we should go back, knowing that our older congregation needs that social connection. Our younger group, they good with Facebook Live. They're good with these social media platforms because that's their context. But we're talking about a congregation like Pastor Clarke and I think we share this. 65% of our congregation are seniors who are low tech but high touch.
Right.
And they are longing for that we can get back in. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I love that. And let me go and say this before I throw it to Pastor McIntosh. Matter of fact, I'm going to throw it to Pastor McIntosh. Talk to about some of the adjustments and how this pandemic, the first wave, has affected you and your approach. Because then I'm gonna shift to some adjustments or really challenges that we've had to each kind of make on our end. Because Pastor Slater, you touched on something that I think is so key. What you said about our older congregations. And so Pastor McIntosh, talk about some of the adjustments and that you've had to make and what you've learned in this opening wave.
I can agree with Pastor Clarke and Pastor Slater as it relates to some of the issues with the seniors in the church and what have you. But my situation is a little bit different because though we haven't been in the church, my church is still seeing me every week in person.
Yeah.
But one of the things I would say that probably one of the biggest things that I've seen during this first wave here is this COVID situation has caused us to stop kicking the can on money we should have been spending on technology a long time ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I believe that this situation now has forced us to probably get where we should have been several years back.
Yep.
And so we're using this time now to adjust and to try to position ourselves so that however long this goes on, we'll still be able to effectively minister,
right,
and do the things that we need to do to be able to reach the masses. As Pastor Slater said, there are, I think, all pastors and folk online now are reaching well more people than they were on a regular Sunday service, and we just want to be able to broaden that out when we get back into the church and fold that into our normal operating procedures.
Yes, sir. I love this, and I think I want everybody to understand this. I'm not saying this because they're gonna laugh. I'm not gonna say this to get a laugh from them. They are gonna laugh when I say it. You can tell I'm the youngest one on here. But here's the thing: we all are pastoring congregations who are predominantly led by seasoned saints.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pastoring 5 generations. Pastor Clarke, past 45 generation, Pastor McIntosh, Pastor Slater, all past. And so the major adjustment that I saw in this was Lord, how am I going to get a grandmama who's a great grandmama who ain't, excuse my way of language, ain't got internet in her home, tell them no, you can't come to the church when they've been so accustomed to coming to church for this, change their whole lifestyle, make it affordable, because you hit it. A lot of us should have been doing this years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's by God's design that we're dealing with predominantly people who are low tech, but they still depend on the high touch. Um, that See me, I'm a extrovert. I'm to the core. I love being around people. I love engaging with people. But at the same time, you know, I'm really am understanding more how important that touch is in connection to the people, because it's been rough, trying to make sure that, everybody is good, trying to reach out to them, and the adjustment of, you know, preaching, we like to say preaching in empty sanctuaries. We're preaching to a camera, and we're preaching to, maybe sometimes we may have a band there, or pertinent people to do this. Some of us pre-record, like Pastor McIntosh, he does the drive up worship where his people can put their eyes on him, but seeing me and touching me are two different things.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that has been one of the major adjustments, because for me, it means something that even through the distance in age, the respect that our seasoned saints have for not just the house of God, but the relationship with their pastor still means something.
Yes, sir.
And then here's another thing I've learned in this pandemic, and then I'm moving on to the next question. I finally figured out it's not going to be the seasoned saints we're going to have a hard time bringing to church when we come back.
Well.
It ain't going to even be the sinners.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest group, really, the hardest group is going to really to entice and coming back and to stay engaged continually. And Pastor Slater, you say that we've got to stay engaged with this social media audience, because again, we are battling schedules.
Mm-hmm.
And the easiest approach for them to get the worship and to see, if they can see worship and not have to come to the building, they say, I'm just as good. Whereas mama and grandmama and granddad and dad, they want to be in the sanctuary. They say, hey, I'm watching online. I'm good. I'm cool. So that's going to be the group that we got to make sure we keep engaged, as well as some of the saints who have got accustomed to, well, I ain't got to get up over Sunday because I already know all 3 G's are going to be live. Mount Zion's going to be live. And so we're making those adjustments of still trying to evangelize through engagement and not lose generations by disengaging. Like our approach to preaching. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I do, but I ain't gonna tell everybody. All these guys are teachers of the word, hands down. They teach and preach, but they go for blood. I'm just gonna tell you, they go for blood. They're gonna go for blood. They don't care if the room empty or the room full. They're gonna go blood in their approach. Same here. But it means something to be able to see people face to face getting it.
Mm-hmm.
While we're in front of the camera, we can't tell if they get it, because they may not be coming, but we really can't tell. So it means something. So outside the adjustment of reaching to an empty room, what has been some of the challenges? What has been some of the challenges in this first wave that I think some people need to know, but maybe don't know, that we've kind of faced during this first wave? Some of the lessons we learned. So, Pastor McIntosh, since you end, I'm gonna start with you. What's some of the challenges that you saw or that you've had to endure in ministering through this first wave of the pandemic?
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily a challenge or a problem, but it was just a situation where it seemed like this. I had several people in our church that were anti-social media. They didn't want to hear anything about Facebook, Instagram, anything. But during this season, I've got nearly all of my members now are on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or they're connected with somebody where they can, can get in the presence and see what's going on. So I think the biggest thing, and one of the things that I talk to our leaders about coming out of this is some kind of way where we can set up some type of fund where we can help the seniors, i.e., with connectivity or with smartphones.
Yeah.
With the church underwriting some of that to make sure our folks can stay connected. Because we have a lot of people that are just on the outside looking in during this time here, and that's been the hardest thing for me to have to deal with. Not wanting to see some of these older members, and even some of the young ones, that feel like they're being left behind because of their financial situation.
Yeah.
And just not being tech savvy and what have you. And so we're trying to work that now, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Because but other than that, I think we've been faring this pretty well here.
Jump in there, Dr. Slater. Jump in there.
Well, I think the biggest challenge you face that I've been facing is when.
Yeah.
Is when, because most of the members, young all the way to old, understand the season we're in. But because of so much chaos, controversy, confusion, media wide, from the top to the bottom, you got some churches in, some churches out, which makes it seem like, that, one church is spiritual and one church is not.
Right.
They don't know whether to believe, the politicians or the sciences.
Yeah.
So right now, the world is in a spin of mass confusion. And so they are looking for somebody to have a stable message. And so the challenge, I think, for me is to make sure that I'm stable in my conversation on Sundays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, to give them a sense of a stable conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's our biggest challenge, because at least it's mine. Let me say that's mine, is to be consistent, to give them one consistent message about what's going on in the world. And then the second one is is to just be honest and say, listen, I don't know when is when. I don't know. From my context, I don't know when is when. And at the same time, not belittle any of our brothers and sisters who are pastoring churches who are opening their doors,
Right.
To allow some of the congregation to come in. And I applaud any of my brothers and sisters who are leading a congregation, who have opened their doors, who are practicing the CDC guidelines. If their facility and their context allows them to do that, then I think we need to champion them and applaud them. And those of us who do not have, those things, we need to be okay with that and say, hey, listen, for our context, we need to just stay exactly where we are and be okay with that. And so the challenge is not to make this a faith or faithless decision.
Yeah.
This decision varies between preacher to preacher, to church, and it's not a he's saved and we not saved, they got faith and we don't have faith. No, it's broader than that. And
Right.
matter of fact, it's not even really a faith question.
Yeah.
It is a facts based on a whole bunch of factors.
Yeah.
It's facts based on a whole bunch of factors. And so I think that's the challenge, man, that I'm facing is, man, if everybody wants to know win. And we've got to be comfortable with saying, hey, I'm okay. Our win is not now, even though some churches win may be or have been last week.
Right. That's so good. You state that out, and Pastor Clark, I'm going to jump to you on this too, because we're talking about the challenges, and I think a lot of us are battling the conversation of having faith instead of understanding we got to put what's best fit for
Hey,
our congregation.
hey, Jay, can I piggyback on something Slater just said before
Yeah.
Clark? I think when we look at it, the church, in a sense, has fallen prey to a lot of the rhetoric we see in our political circles.
Yeah.
Where something as simple as a mask has been now so politicized until it has nothing to do with politics. It's just a health issue. And now it's now if you wear one, you are a liberal. If you don't, you are conservative. And now we've allowed that same type of divisiveness to get within the context of the church, where instead of being collegiate as brothers and saying what, as Pastor Slater said, we're applauding those who have the means and the platform where they can go back in safely. If you can do that, praise God.
Yeah.
But if not, then we have to use wisdom and have to
Yeah.
be realistic as it relates to the context and the situation of the churches, because none of our churches are cookie cutters after the other.
Right.
And I just think that's something that's bothered me over the last 3 or 4 months, 5 months or so, is that we see this stuff on TV where pastors are getting up bashing other pastors for not rushing back into church. And as Pastor Slater said, we want to come in, but our people are seeing at the same time here in the state of Georgia,
Yeah.
where church folk went to church, believing God, trusting God, doing all those things,
And still.
and they died.
Yeah.
You know, God is sovereign, and our faith does not change the sovereignty of God. Whatever the will of God is, that's what's going to be.
Right.
And I just think we have to not allow ourselves to get drawn into that secular thinking as it relates to pitting one group against the other. We have it, you don't. We're faithful and you're not. And that's something that I'm so glad in our context, we don't see that in our church.
Right.
I honestly believe if I tried to go back in Sunday, I'd have a low-grade mutiny on my hand. I believe that.
Yeah.
And it's not that the people don't love me and respect me, but our people are not stupid. They can see what's going on every day.
Right.
And so as leaders, we have to do what Pastor Slater said. We have to walk in wisdom with this stuff.
That's it. And Pastor Clark, jump in right here and talk about the challenge of that. Either the challenge you faced in this. We've all talked about the older congregation, and then really, like Pastor Slater said, win. That's been some of the challenge about win. Pastor McIntosh has really looked as even piggybacked on that. So Pastor Clark, kind of talk about kind of like really what might have been a challenge for you per se.
Yeah. Couple of things come to mind real quick. One is outreach. That's the first one that comes to mind, because prior to the pandemic, we would do food giveaways with the Middle Georgia Food Bank. And so the way they would deliver the food, it would just be pallets of food that you would have to arrange in bags and put into cars. So most of the people who volunteered to make that happen were my older crowd, retirees, arranging the food. We had like a assembly line deal going. But once the pandemic hit, we didn't see how we could continue doing that and keep everybody safe. But now that we can get the food in boxes, it's still a challenge because my seniors are reluctant to come out, and I don't blame them, So it's me and maybe a couple of other middle-aged guys made it happen this last Wednesday, 2-3 weeks ago, I had plenty of people. But once school started back,
That's
some of
it.
those folk are in the education field. They're back at work. So last Wednesday was just a handful. I mean, like 3-4 of us. Tomorrow, I don't know how many of us is going to be, but we're still going to make it do what it do. So
Right.
doing outreach within our community, right where people live. We're in a residential area, so that's been a challenge. Yet and still doing outreach that's visible and tangible, where the people can see we're still open, we're still functioning, we're still doing ministry. Another issue for me personally has been communicating, and it's easy to do, right? Theoretically. But for me, it's been a challenge. I sent a letter out to my members early on with this pandemic. I emailed my leadership, give them updates that I feel like are pertinent. But I sent the email out actually today. We're going to have a church meeting just with the core leadership the end of September to still discuss financial reports and all the reports we would normally get for a regular church business meeting. We're going to have that at the end of September because we have not had a business meeting since the end of January, and we still have them. We still have church conference, but it's going to be. But it's a great way to keep people informed and to plant seeds where there's nobody there but us.
Right.
So when speaking of that, I have a Wednesday afternoon prayer deal that's just for membership, where I would share my heart with them at that time. Different things, but those are some of the challenges that jump out immediately. And my members who live alone are really, how can we reach them? How can we combat loneliness for
Yeah.
members who live alone? Now, one thing Lady Michelle and I did, we had a drive by just to come by and just say hello to us. We out up under by the church, just drive through. We just want to say hello, look, put our eyeballs on you, you put your eyeballs on us. And it was great, man, just to see people, and give people an opportunity to get out the house and see some other persons in their church family, and yet just keep it moving. So those have been some challenges for me. How can I minister to my members who live alone, and yet and still do even more outreach? But praise God, we're able to do what we're doing.
And I applaud each of you. And I don't know if you all can see the comments, guys, but y'all members are chiming in. They
Praise
are
God.
applauding you all as well. One of the challenges for me, and I can pick this back with Pastor Clarke, the communication piece and outreach. That's been like, I'm a huge. Um, if I post on Facebook, I can go there because a lot of people who are part of our church, they're there. But then at the same time, getting the list of all of our seasoned saints to try to figure out a way of communicating with them to keep them in touch by using our deacons ministry to kind of reach out to them, say, hey, y'all break this down, check on them, give me a report. And I praise God for there's a few in our congregational care who they have taken on the role like, hey, Pastor, we gonna call and we gonna let you know. Well, that kind of helps me,
Oh yeah.
tremendously. And I appreciate that because it's not something I asked. They took the initiative because again, they're looking at Pastor has a young family. Uh, Pastor is, moving about trying to check on us and do these things and stuff. So it did my heart well. It's amazing you bring up about giving away food. In Monroe County, we were the first to do the COVID-19 testing, free COVID-19 testing.
All right.
In Monroe County. We should be doing again later on in August. And now this Friday, we're going to be giving away food in conjunction with the Middle Georgia Food Bank. Because to me, me and Pastor Slater talked about this when we put this together. I was talking about putting this together. We're about to enter a zone where people are going to be hungry. They're going to have so many needs that it's going to take churches coming together and not trying to do it all alone. You get what I'm saying? We want to kind of pull our resources. Like, okay, I love the 3G. I keep throwing the 3G connection. If y'all don't patent it, I will. But I love the fact that you three as pastors can use your demographic, your relationship with each other, but then also locale and demographics and still work together to meet needs in your various areas. I love the fact you can bring a drive-through and have your members, you can wave at them, because sometimes it's easier for them to come to a centralized location than for, us trying to go, let me drive here today, let me go here. And what we don't understand is we're pulling wear and tear on ourselves by trying to reach all, knowing in order to win some, but then doing no good to our own bodies. So the challenge of trying to, stay connected, stay in communication. I love the idea of having the family meeting. We did that with our leaders on a Zoom call a couple weeks ago. I pulled a Zoom call, pull our core leadership in. Hey, y'all, this is where we at. This is what we got going on. This is what we got coming up. And the question came about, so Pastor, when we coming back to church? Y'all see how, because again, most of their focus, their mindset is, well, I somewhat can go everywhere else. I said, but then I had to basically pause and tell them, listen, even in going everywhere else, it still may not be safe as you think it is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Especially if I'm going places and they ain't made masks mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to politicize it, but I'm looking at the science. Like, if they're telling us it's safe for me to wear a mask, I don't care how much it's squeezing my face, let me go and put it on. If they're telling me wash my hands and do all stuff that was common sense, should have been common sense, but now all of a sudden this has made it more prevalent and relevant. You don't want people on pins and needles. So from my mindset, it wasn't just about when, Pastor Slater, it's about how. How do we re-enter? Because I don't know about y'all, the people God has assigned me to, our calling card is love, and they touch everybody. They don't care. I be trying to have, welcome and fellowship time for 3 minutes. It turned into doggone 27 before this. So you can imagine when they come back how crazy it's gonna be. So, the adjustments we're gonna have, like you said, Pastor Slater, earlier, in our worship, how we do, we stole the Wakanda greeting. Start this season. This is Wakanda.
Yeah.
Hey, we like this. Mount Zion love, Mount Zion love, Mount Zion. It's those things, what a lot of people like was when the ushers would do this. I'm like, y'all were already doing this. Go ahead and do this now. It's little things like that. But I think our whole mindset is not going to be about how we preach. It's the other, or how we teach the word. This time it's going to be how do we connect and keep people safe, and letting them know we got to find adjustments. And that's been a sort of challenge on our end, but by God's grace, we've been making it happen. The prayer calls, I stole that idea from Clarke, doing the prayer. I did. I'm like, okay, we're going to get freeconferencecall.com. Because when you see all these things, there are resources there. And this is where I'm going with it. Because there are pastors and leaders listening to us tonight who are like, I'm struggling. I'm trying. I'm feeling the pressure because I'm trying to speak in faith, while at the same time struggle with being politically correct, and at the same time dealing with bootleg scientists within the church, who measure with the hand of the oh, just put your little sash on it, you'll be okay, and trying to let them know, listen, I can't do this, or we can't do that. Can't go about it this way, that way. So what we're entering this second wave is here. We, as a whole, as a people, we've had success and failures in this first wave. All because, number one, we ain't never seen this before.
Right.
This was one comment of every pastor across this country. Ain't none of us been through this.
Right.
Hands down. But at the same time, knowing none of us have been through this, what's really at stake in this second wave? Because we got an election coming up. We got confusion in local government. We got craziness in local government. We're dealing with racism. We're dealing with COVID-19 on top of that. We're dealing with trying to voter suppression. Let's call it what it is. We're dealing with this whole fear factor that's trying to be put out in the communities. What can we encourage a pastor? How can we encourage our churches and our members to stay focused? Because and in doing that, let's talk about what's really at stake in this second wave. Pastor Slater, what's at stake?
Well, there's a lot of things. Maybe I don't know if I would use the word even at stake, simply because we thought we had something that we really didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we are sadly seeing is that we thought we were beyond certain things. And the reality, I call it the reality of not being as far as we thought we were. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to struggle with now, even in the body of Christ. We thought we were further along on the racial agenda. Yep. We thought we were further along on the church agenda. And all of this, I think, has been a flood dam opening up, saying you really are not as far as you thought you were. You still have not come to the grips that we are one in Christ. We still haven't come to the grip that, as what you said, Pastor Lowder, is that it's going to take churches working together, but we still are worried about me and my 25. And as long as you're worried about me and my 25, your nerves are going to continue to be on edge. Yeah. When we get to the point that, hey, this is where God has me, I need to utilize this. And sometimes we might end up preaching like 120 years and nobody joined, but that doesn't mean they aren't affected.
Right.
Okay.
And I think we have started measuring effectiveness by the offering plate, by the numbers of butts in the seats. And here's something we've got to watch next stage. People are going to start judging their effectiveness, and this is dangerous, by how many views they got.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a slippery slope. If you've been used to counting numbers in the pews and counting how much money you made in the back, this era here, you can start counting how many views. Yeah. Man, how many views you get? Man, how many views you get? Well, that's the same thing. It's just being done virtually. It's counting the numbers in your. How many you holding, Doc? You remember you go to the conference? How many you holding, Doc?
Yeah.
What you putting in, Doc? Guess what? That same conversation, that's what's at stake. That if you start having conversations with your fellow preachers about how many views you're having, you're in a dangerous position. So there's a lot here at stake. And here's where I tell you, here's what's at stake. While we are doing certain things, if we do not open our eyes to the changes that are going on within our churches and flow with it, we're going to lose. We won't lose our older generation, but we're going to lose our younger generation.
Right. Because
here is the deal. Everybody on this podcast, on this live has done this. We have shown our congregation and we've shown the world that it don't take 2 hours.
Right.
To praise God. Yeah. It does not take 2 hours to get an effective word to the minds and hearts of the people.
That's right.
Yeah. And now that we've demonstrated this, You cannot say, I want you to come back to the 2-hour service.
Right.
Mama gonna come because she good. But Junior, and then I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna let my other brothers speak. Is church, these young people are not coming to church just to have church.
Right.
They can do that at home.
Yep.
They're going to be a part of memberships that have causes.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This new generation, they are not about church just because we go into church.
Right.
But if you can show them the church with a cause, helping to put food on people's tables, helping to clothe, bills, if you got a cause, they come.
Yes, sir.
All you got is a service, well, they'll catch you online.
Dr. McIntosh, jump in there. Jump in there. What's that statement?
Pastor Slater is saying that's so true, but everything he described is simply the church being the church. And I think this COVID and this whole pandemic now has forced us to move from a place of complacency and move now to a point where we're able to show and model the Christianity that we've been preaching about for years. Pastor Slater and I were joking the other night, and I told him, out of all the years that I've been in ministry, I never thought I'd be called the milkman, the produce man, the watermelon man, and the preacher man. But in this COVID, in order to meet the needs that people have, you've got to come out of your comfort zone.
Yes, sir.
And you've got to do things as leaders that probably in the past, your last year, you probably wouldn't have contemplated doing.
Right.
But and I've seen it, and I've seen it at our church now since we've been going through this COVID. Our church is actually growing now during this COVID. Yeah. And I believe wholeheartedly that one of the reasons why, a central reason why, is because we're doing so much in the realm of outreach now.
Yeah.
And I think that has to remain intentional when we get back to a situation where we can go in. And it cannot be understated. We've got to work together.
Yes. Yes.
We've got to work together, man. There's no other way we're going to win this fight and turn the tide for God if we're still trying to be separate and doing our own thing.
Right. Pastor Clarke is fixing something. I'm gonna jump in right here because when I'm celebrating now, Pastor Slater and Pastor McIntosh going into year number 4 of being at Mount Zion. August 1st, 2016 was the day I was chosen by God and selected by the church to be their pastor. Mm-hmm. And our church, when I came in, and they Mount Zion, I tell the story all the time when I talk to people. I didn't know about what Mount Zion was in the YouTube video of the late Tressie Taylor singing "Tell the Angels." It was viral. That's all I knew. When I came there in 2016, preached, came selected pastor, I looked at what the church was doing. And my first, because I'm coming from fellowship, which was community driven. Outreach was key. Pastor Reed didn't play, the founder didn't play about it. And then at the same time, Dr. Tolan Morgan, my pastor now, does not play about it. They believe in outreach. And growing up, even as my father, being a PK under my dad, he was huge on outreach. And so I said to Mount Zion, I said, I just want to tell y'all this. We're good at having church. The question is, do we know how to be the church?
Be the church.
And what COVID-19 has exposed is who knows how to be the church and not just have church. Mm-hmm. See, you said it, Pastor Slater, we've been basing church off numbers. We've been basing church off how much the offering was. Well, it didn't matter how much it don't matter how much the offering is now. But people still need to know their responsibilities that still take place for us to do. People want to know now, okay, how many people have you served in the community this week? You know, how are you providing COVID-19 tests? And so I'm so blessed now that our people and our church in that area is clicking. We've got to do ministry. We when I came in, we you know, we've done the simple back to school drives, but it's really, it ain't about back to school supplies. It's now making sure kids got a computer, you know, making sure they have some kind of technology so those who are having to do virtual, the parents who have to work or change their work schedule because of their children having to be home, choosing to do distance learning. That's a ministry. You know, the church has to respond to that. You said it earlier, I think, Dr. McIntosh, about pulling the resources and the funds together of having people so that people can know the way the church became the church was we did not, if you read the book of Acts, the Bible records around Acts chapter 4, Acts chapter 2 after the Holy Spirit came in, they sold all their possessions to make sure everyone who had a need, it was met. Now, in today's world, a community who does not know that the church is invested is a community who don't want that church.
You better believe
it. Now, you ask us today, go sell all our possessions. Hey, you ain't got to worry about no church vote. They going to change the locks. You're going to be out there by yourself. But the key matter is, some of us, God has blessed with so much, but we still do so less. And so there is something, the question is, what is our priority when it comes to ministering to the masses? Because again, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, people are dealing with real life issues, not knowing how, not knowing where. Congress shut down last weekend. Unemployment was done. People, a lot of our, what we were doing in churches, income was increased because they was getting extra money. But now those things are shut down. People are now saying, look, I need this. Somebody help. There's a cry for help now. And I'm trying to get people to understand COVID-19, racism, all the social injustice, everything that we're dealing with is not just a physical issue, a human issue, a spiritual issue. Ultimately, it's a mind issue. Because people's minds are being attacked because they're like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? So, Pastor Clarke, how do we get people and minister to people's mental capacities while still trying to meet their physical needs in this?
Well, I mean, we always need to minister in a way that empowers people, where the mind is renewed and life is transformed. And going back to the question before, I don't know if it was already raised. I'm sorry, I had to. Man, my phone about died, so I had to go and get it a lifeline.
No, but, you went to go sneak a kiss from Mama Michelle. That's all it was.
No, so because what's at stake, man, is the church being relevant. People are already questioning if the church is relevant, especially the Black church. And what's at stake is that we continue serving in a way where we give them an irrefutable answer. So yeah, we got to be relevant, but to really empower people's minds, man, give them the practical how-tos. And I would even suggest that now there has to be an entrepreneurial dynamic to ministry and preaching to empower our people to develop multiple income streams, and even now challenge some of our people, especially our youth. Every crisis presents some type of an opportunity, right? And so it would be incumbent upon all of us to challenge our people to think, okay, what business has God impregnated you with that could be birthed in this season? I talked to one of my daughters in ministry today. And she told me the Lord was telling, I commended her on an event that she had recently, a virtual Zumba event. Michelle had attended it and everything. But she was telling me all kind of stuff God was telling her to do. And she didn't see the logic in it. She's like, really, Lord? Really? And the more she stepped out in obedience and did what God told her to do, people were asking her, hey, I love what you're doing. How can I sow into what you're doing? And so, I mean, you never know how God will move in this season to yet and still meet needs. I'm still believing that there is a very practical dimension to ministry that many times we overshadow it with the mystical dimension. You know, God's going to open doors. God's going to make ways, the mystical dimension. But the question is, what you going to do? You know, what are you going to do? Can you write a business plan? Can you qualify for a small business loan? Can you still tap into the resources that certain people have where they're ready to invest in the business? Everybody ain't broke. Just like when the last financial crisis we had, everybody wasn't broke, and everybody ain't broke now. So in terms of challenging the mindsets of people, it's a matter of really addressing what can be practical right now, and getting people to understand that there are some options we may have that we've not been entertaining because we haven't had to, and maybe even now there's some options people aren't entertaining because they don't know that they have those options at their disposal.
I love that, because I think now more than ever, and Pastor Slater, Pastor McIntosh, either one jump on right here. Pastor Clarke said something about the building the financial, educating people about financial entrepreneurship. If you do your study about Black Wall Street, if you really look into that, because of what they were facing, they knew that since we can't get it from here, if we pull our resources together and do it within this entrepreneurship more than ever. Was comment put up by about somebody watching, talking about how so many businesses are birthed. I'll put up, I think it was Jay. Yeah, so many businesses have been birthed during this pandemic, so many ideas and everything. Because here's the thing, I think people need to understand all it takes is one idea to change your life. All it takes is one focused idea, going after, saying, if I can do this to help this right here. At the end of the day, the simple thing of Zumba, something that just so many people do, and they will go places. Now I can stand in front of you can sit there in front of your computer and have a whole Zumba class going on. Those little things, and people will sow into it because you're helping them with this. From helping people deal with how to build a business, practical application on business principles, doing those things, leadership principles. The first person, y'all, and I ain't saying this because he on here, I've said it privately and publicly to him. The first pastor I ever saw to basically come out and locally and talk about business principles and doing things, entrepreneurship, was David Anthony Clarke. I mean, it was in my generation because he's in there writing books, teaching leadership principle classes, and we're sitting there like, ain't nobody told us about this stuff. All they said was to us, to get a church, you had to preach good, be nice and E flat. Don't take the church money and don't mess with, never mind, I ain't going there. That's what a lot of guys were presented for, like what leadership. But you came and told us, hey, if we're going to serve this 21st century, the tide is shifting. There is a paradigm shift, moving from mom and pop mentality leadership to now effective, Pastor Slater, you said it, effective leadership, effective ministry, that Pastor McIntosh, you put on it too, of what we're doing, because people want to see churches who are effective, not causing more infections.
All right.
Pastor Lowder, let me chime in here and say,
please,
this. What Pastor Clarke and all of you all talking about, here is the thing. is that we're living in a microwave society, and people are looking for instant gratification and instant success.
Right.
The things that we're talking about takes time.
Yeah.
To teach people financial responsibility who have been financially irresponsible for a long time.
Yep.
That mind does not change overnight.
Right.
So that's we've got to approach it that way. I think sometimes it's the way we've approached it. We've approached it as though listen to this seminar, and once you get this seminar, it won't be long. You will be living on top of the world. And that's just not the case.
Right.
That seminar, that leadership class Dr. Clarke teaches, listen, you have to continue that thing out through 5, 10, 15 years out.
Yeah.
And so, we have to start now because of that. But let me go ahead and just juice this up a little bit.
Well, juice it in. Juice it.
Go for it.
That's all good. But I'm going through COVID-19 now.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost my job.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 kids sitting at the dinner table. I've got, my last check from the government.
Yep.
I may be facing eviction.
All right.
And then here is what they say. And here's what we got to admit now. They say, well, that money you was giving to the church, call the church.
Church, yep.
They can help you out. And let me tell you all, let's just be honest. We are just like the government. We can write certain checks for certain amounts only for a certain time. And only for a certain group of people.
That's it.
Let's just be honest.
That's it.
All of the needs that we face in our churches, just on the financial scope, listen, with only 10% of the people giving 10% of their tithes, I don't know about these other brothers or you other 3 brothers bank.
Hey.
We don't even have the resources.
That's it.
To be for just my folks. I don't have the resources to pay all of their mortgages or rent and put food on their table. And like Dr. Clarke said, you're right. Absolutely. Everybody is not broke. And so it's that time for those of us, we've got to stop. And here's something I'll say, and then I'll let my other brothers come in. We've got to stop walking over Lazarus.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good.
Time is out. We've got to stop walking over Lazarus. We've seen Lazarus every day.
Yep.
And we walked over Lazarus every day. Yep. Now everybody wants to say, since everybody, it's COVID-19, let's look at Lazarus. Well, we've got to do something different. And so that's what I was saying. We've got to admit that we as a church don't have enough resources.
Yeah.
We can't.
But let me say this, if I may.
Go ahead, Doc.
I agree. We don't have enough resources, and you can't help everybody.
Right.
I agree wholeheartedly that it does take time, and everybody's mindset can't change. I may get in trouble for that, but there are some people, they're going to be stuck in a certain mindset that will not foster a better life. But here's one thing that we're going to do at Union Grove. We have a house. It's called House of Promise, and we're getting it renovated. And one thing we want to do is take families who qualify and partner with a lender. We had this family screen presented to us, partner with a lender, and they will rent this house for 1 to 2 years max, and move from this house into their own home. And we want to keep doing that time after time after time. And it's like a home ownership development pipeline. Right. And hopefully this can create a new model of ministry if other churches are doing it, cool. And if they are doing it, I'd love to see exactly how they're doing it, because I'm not aware of anybody else who's doing it like this. But I think that can change a mindset and change a culture and plant a seed in people's minds to at least set a goal of owning your own home. And yeah, I agree that there are some people struggling, and the way things are looking in the upcoming months is going to get much, much worse. But I would still like to believe that there are some people that we can help with the resources we do have. And one way we really can empower people in this season is to really instill in them home ownership. I'm going to say this one more thing and I'm done. A couple of years ago, I had a Monopoly party with my young people. I bought a whole bunch of Monopoly board games and had a Monopoly party and established the rules and stuff. And we did it for an hour because, you know, Monopoly can go for a while.
Yes,
And so, I mean, I dealt with issues like passive income, equity, all of this. And as they played the game and tried to find out, well, why did the people who won, why did they win? And the people who didn't win, why didn't they win? And my hope was to get them to understand, if you really want to generate wealth, you want to own property.
yeah,
So I think it's stuff like that, capturing kids when they're young,
yeah.
working with families who can transition from renting to ownership. Just want to deposit I think that can make a difference.
That's great. Pastor McIntosh, jump in right here because we only got five. We got 5 minutes left. 5 minutes left. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's good. Pastor Slater and Pastor Clarke were saying, and yourself, is shifting from just having church to practicing holistic ministry.
Yeah.
To minister and tailor ministry where it touches every facet of our people's lives, and being intentional with that. I was sitting there thinking about a book I read some years ago, and it said the reason we have broke churches is because we have broke people in those churches.
Mm.
And those people, what they look at as acceptable for their own house is always acceptable for the house of God. So they won't raise their own personal standard higher. And until we learn how to shift that mentality, Pastor Slater, I know for sure can attest to this, is that we pastor two churches where years ago, the churches had the opportunity to gain a substantial land holding.
Wow.
At a really reasonable price, but because the view was only for the now, the people didn't think, well, why would we need that? We only need enough plot for a church building and for a cemetery. But now I've seen how the Lord has shifted the mentality at our church now to where the people see that where everything is now can be done. And one of the things that we're doing now during this COVID that I'm doing intentionally is we're still building. We're still showing the people that God is able to do things even now. Matter of fact, I met today on a project we get ready to start building in the next few weeks. And what's happening is now is God is showing people and the church is the template that you can do things outside of just have church. And the power of God, and as Pastor Clarke would say, there are ideas and concepts that are being released by the Spirit of God, but we've got to be willing to step out there and show the people that it's possible if we move from our own little comfort zone, our own little circles that we've locked ourselves into.
I love it. I love it. I don't know about you all who are watching this, but just for me, just sitting here listening to again holistic ideas, ministries, things that are practical. I told y'all these guys gonna make us think. Uh, they force us to look at not just where we are. Pastor McIntosh, you stated it. You got to look beyond the now. Because if the truth be told, a lot of our churches, or a lot of churches today, because they were stuck at right now, are struggling with trying to move forward into what's next.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I want to do, and I hope you three will agree, because I want to respect each of your time, but I want people to come back and chat if we can do this again this same time next week, if you all are available. Here's what I want to talk about next week. We're going to deal with the holistic approach to how do we deal with certain barriers that are facing our people. And it's, we kind of touched on different things a little bit. Each of us, you heard tonight, Pastor Clarke just talked about the idea of turning a home that place they own, using that to put a family in for 1 to 2 years. Use that model to prepare them to gain their own home while building wealth, and then you're also saving for another one. Because here's what can happen. I believe when somebody who sees this idea will invest and say, I've got a property, Pastor, that we want to partner with you to do this for a family. Do y'all see what's going on? Then you'll see, no matter if they're in Kathleen, it may be in Elko, Perry, Hawkinsville area, Warner Robins, Forsyth, Bolingbrook, North Macon. People, this is the things that we're trying to do, because churches have to understand, people have to understand, life is bigger than the plot you live on.
Amen.
That's it.
Life is bigger than the land you live on. It's been said, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man how to fish, eat for a lifetime. Question is, and we're going to talk about this next week, how we can move from giving people fish to give them a holistic view on how to get fish.
Teach them how to own their own pond.
Teach how to own, yeah. And so, y'all, I want to thank Pastor Derrell McIntosh. I want to thank Pastor Lonnie Slater. I want to thank Pastor Clarke. I want to thank their lovely wives. I got to shout out my wife who's watching tonight. I appreciate all you all. I love you all tremendously. And
Thank you,
thank
man.
God for
Love
each
you
of you
too.
all.
Man.
Join us next week. Next Tuesday, 7:15. We'll be back for Necessary Conversations, a holistic view next week. God bless y'all. If you missed part of the broadcast, please go back and watch it. It'll be available. Thank you so much. And I pray y'all have a blessed rest of your evening.
I'm getting ready to go live at 9 again, man.
Hey, y'all go listen to Pastor McIntosh. He finna give you a word today. Y'all be blessed.
All right.
All right, man. Bless you, man.
Bless